I just wanted to pick up where we left off with Libra. So we discussed that Libra's archetype would probably be an ENFP. Moving from Libra, we're going to do Scorpio. So Scorpio was kind of one of those, like when I came across this personality, I was like, yeah, that would be Scorpio. It's a very transformative personality that really sheds its skin and changes itself a lot, like that Scorpio nature. And what I came up with was ISTP. So this type is known as being the virtuoso. They're really the type that can just learn something, learn a trade, and really have that change them completely inside and out. They really take on something fully, and they really transform into that role. Whether it's a job or a study or something, they really envelop into that because they have a definite knack for investigating. That's why they really can see through the lines and kind of see through behaviors and actions and find out their own truths to things. But ISTP, when I was reading about it and going back to the Harry Potter Myers-Briggs video that I did, Arthur, Harry, lots of like Scorpio energy with that transformation. That's really like they were both entering these worlds that were kind of different from their past or who they kind of see themselves as. Arthur enveloping himself in the Muggle community, which was very, very different for magical, wizards and witches. And um, he's just so fascinated by it, wanted to learn like every nook and cranny. And Harry similarly was enamored by the magical world and what it had to offer because he felt like the world that he had been brought up in was just so dull and unfulfilling for himself. And it held a lot of negative aspects because of his home situation with the Dursleys. He didn't feel like he had a sense of freedom, and so that's what that magical community really offered to him, and he was really transformed by it. And that virtuoso is just picking up things really quickly. Like, I feel like Scorpios have to do that in a way, and because they get really ripped down to the nitty gritty, they have to be quick starters to kind of function in this practical world, is to be able to get through the day. So they have to be very, very quick on their feet energy. And I think with that Aries and Virgo, the sixth house, I mean daily life, that comes in there. These are like self-starters. Now they say that the ISTP girl archetype is kind of thought of as a tomboy, and I really see that with Scorpio females. They're either like overtly like sensual appearance, it's very, very alluring, or it's very much kind of awkward looking, very androgynous, wearing a little more like masculine fashion, things like that. So they have explosive feats, ISTPs, so they will really come out with like this energy, this kind of almost unpredictable nature, and I feel like that's very Scorpio. Is just that erratic, like that when that emotion or that thing kicks in with them, it's just no holding back. And let's see, they learn from the inside out, so they really envelop themselves into that trade or that career or whatever that study is, and then they can kind of come out and offer what they've learned to the rest of the world. And I think a good example too is Arya and from Game of Thrones, and I think I talked about her in the Harry Potter one too, but I recently watched the series again. I watch it like every year just because I learn so much every time. But she really, in every season, she kind of like reinvents herself, and it's really, really cool to watch. I mean, it's very scary to see someone of her age doing that and so close to death and all that so many times and just surviving. but it's really really commending to see how what she does to survive. And she goes into the House of Black and White and fully learns their trade and everything while still staying true to her mission and who she is. And she's not really an in with like that future foresight. I mean, she really wants to kill these people that have robbed her of a family and things like that, but she doesn't really have a plan as to how to get there. And I think that turns into the ISTP. She's not really like an INTJ or something that has that these things need to happen in order for me to do this. She just knows that at the end of the day, she wants revenge. And that's kind of her motive. So I think she's a great example of an ISTP. Um, Lisbeth, like she's the hacker that kind of gets into things, and maybe a hacker archetype would be really good for Scorpios. I think technology would probably be very easy for them to adapt to in the fourth house of what's familiar to them, what's natal, with Aquarius in there, and so maybe that's what they do. They're the true hackers of the zodiac in a sense, and then that can kind of really learn from getting in between those blurred lines. And so I think, yeah, that was the ISTP. Can be a very intense energy, but most of all, I think that they just really are eager to learn a trade, or they're very curious personalities. Yeah, so going from Scorpio, that introversion, the I, and then we're going to go to Sagittarius, which is, similarly explosive, but it's more on a social level. And I identified Sagittarius to be an ESFP type. Um, and again, that feeling type, the fire and waters, you would usually see, I feel like, but the Scorpio is more of an analytical sign. Um, yeah, but that would be something that's pretty natural for them. So the Sagittarius, they they're the entertainers. I really feel like similar to Libras in a way, but without that kind of like activism platform that ENFPs kind of have, with that Libra that I'm associating with it. ESFPs are more so just for entertainment and enjoyment, and I think that's that Sagittarian, like kind of bohemian quality that they just kind of want to engage with people and really brighten their day and kind of give that enthusiasm for the world to enjoy. They also have a definite comedic streak. I usually find Sagittarius as being very, very funny, and I kind of associate that sign with humor. They don't mind the limelight at all, but they do they do dislike negative attention, the ESFP type, and I really think that's Sagittarian too. I think that they kind of need to be admired in a sense for them to continually give off that energy, and so they don't like that negative attention would probably really really hit them hard in the self-esteem field. And one of the careers that it kind of associated with the ESFP archetype was a tour guide. And I'm like, who better than to show you around town than a Sagittarius? I mean, that's probably explored every restaurant, every bar, every garden, every, little unique thing in a place. I mean, that Sagittarius energy, I mean, they literally represent travel and culture and, branching out, discovering things. And so it really kind of screamed ESFP to me. Let me know what you guys think about that one. And then they lose focus. So that P isn't very a judgmental sign. So they're not, again, they don't have that specific goal orientation. They're just there in the moment, kind of living through things, entertaining. And they're not a very harsh sign. They're usually a very light sign, not so serious. And yeah, so it's hard for them to kind of follow through on things, because I think that they just want to serve maybe a more detached role. They don't really like to get committed to things or involved. Maybe they kind of run away from that a little bit. So yeah, so that's Sagittarius ESFP. Let me know what you think. So then we're going to move from ESFP to Capricorn, and I think that Capricorn would be ESTJ. So ESTJ is really kind of a rigid sign, um, like or type. Um, and not that all Capricorns out there are rigid. I mean, there's variations on all the types, but the archetype, the kind of stereotype for a Capricorn is very somebody that's very inflexible, and is very past oriented, likes structure, has ambition, and I think all of these are aspects of the ESTJ personality. And what I really agree with here is the ESTJs are community focused, so they like to involve the community, whether it's their neighborhood, maybe it's a political field, like getting their local government involved, or bringing a group together. I feel like Capricorns can do that. They are really good at networking, I find, and I think that that's pretty important for this role, and that they hold social statuses in high esteem. So their accomplishments, kind of where they stand in society, all that's like really important for them to kind of keep that structure, that earth element intact. And, they are so ambitious. They really want to climb to the top and achieve things. Like I feel like a Capricorn out of all the signs, would probably have like the most trophies or awards in their house. That sense of accomplishment. They need to be known for that, and they need to have achieved a lot. And so they're very aware of those things, and they're constantly reaching for more. And I think the T really plays into fact here with that Earth energy. They are kind of out of touch with their feelings and the feelings of others. I really feel like they just don't know what to do with that energy, and then that kind of keeps them focused on their goals and driving. I feel like feeling for them probably gets in the way and slows them down, similar to that ISTJ. So I think with that T, that allows them to kind of keep going ahead, and accomplishing things. And they're very calculating, that T and J, thinking and judging. I mean, they know what they want to do. They're not going to hold back. They're not going to let things get in their way. They're going to climb that ladder. And I think it's that knowledge of the past and how things have played out, with that S, like that structure, really guides them, into the future, because they don't represent the future at all. That's the next sign, Aquarius. Capricorn is what's been or what's happened, and so I think they would have to for sure be an S, if anything else. Yeah. So let's see here. So we're going to go from Capricorn, and we're going to talk about Aquarius. Now, I kind of mentioned on the first part, I was jumping ahead a little bit, but where Leo gets ENFJ, I would say Aquarius, their counterpart, would be the INFJ. So the only difference really is that first function, so the extroversion versus introversion. And I am open to debate about this, because Aquarius is known for groups and socializing and getting out there and networking from, just like the sign before it, Capricorn. But it's more of a humanitarian way of going about things, and it's not so self-focused, where you're trying to achieve, your own status. It's more about getting the group where you want it to be, doing things like on a team, or it's more like that friendship, that group. Aquarius represents friendship, and I think an INFJ really needs a few select people in their life that they truly believe are there for them no matter what, and that have that. And I think that is a big indicator of friendship, and Aquarius represents that. INFJs are known to be universal understanding and highly empathic in that way. Like, they can kind of put themselves in anyone else's shoes at any given time and kind of understand from that perspective. And it's because they're almost like not ego driven, and so they're allowed to kind of step in and out of different personalities to kind of see things. And I think because they have an innate sense or conviction of that they have a higher purpose in life, and that they are not always sure of what that is, but they definitely feel like a touch of importance on a big scale. Um, and they have long-term planning. So Aquarius obviously represents the future, so that's long-term. So your INFJs could be, into predictive stuff, just like the things that I've shown you guys, like tarot, astrology, things like that, that kind of give you some kind of outlook towards the future or maybe what could eventuate. But they take those jumps, and they're not really past focus on what's happened, and what we can kind of see that's cyclical, like the Capricorns would with that ends, or predicting maybe something that hasn't happened, but they feel sure of it in their bones, and they're not sure why they feel sure of it, but they take that NI leap, and that extroverted feeling is, I think, plays into that sociability where they need to connect with people, so that those people can feel understood, and so that Aquarius, that INFJ, can feel validated at the end of the day. That even though they're introverted, they do put people's true emotions and feelings on a pedestal. So Aquariuses are, I think, very awkward like an INFJ in that they don't revel in small talk. They don't really understand how to go about small talk, is because they're so far out from space. That it's a natural way for us to communicate, but for an Aquarius, I think that they have bigger intentions, and especially with conversation, that it just kind of like defeats their purpose of existence almost in a way. And so I think they kind of run away from like those situations, like an INFJ would kind of need that bubble to kind of recharge and stuff. And so it really takes people that do understand them to know that they're not just being weird or just talking about the things that they want to talk about, is that they just don't really understand how to communicate in that manner. So yeah, and then like I said before, with the Leo being the E, the extrovert, loves the spotlight, doesn't mind being in that pedestal. The Aquarius is kind of more behind the scenes working. Think Dumbledore. Even though he was the headmaster, he was rarely around for big events and things like that. He let McGonagall kind of take the reins with that stuff, and she was an E. He was more so behind the scenes, kind of orchestrating like the plans, and being there when the situation called for it, when he know that it was a moment that his presence was necessary. Um, yeah, and so that's what I think an Aquarius would be, an INFJ. And then the last sign, this one I can speak to. I do have a lot of these in my life. The Pisces and the archetype of the INFP. So INFPs, again, we go from an INFJ, and we're only one function different, that last function, and they're both dreamers. They're in the dreamers group, which again, is that like unknown thing that's very comforting for them, is exploring the unknown. But I think Pisces is even more elaborate internal world that kind of takes place, and they really kind of live so different from everyone else, and that's introverted feeling, whereas the INFJ displays extroverted feeling. So it's about connecting with others through emotion. The introverted feeling really makes them hermits in a way, is like you don't really know if you can ever penetrate that wall, or that bubble that they wear around them. It's just so tough. It's really tough material, you guys. It can be frustrating for sure. You're knocking, and you're just like, is anybody here? Am I getting through to anyone? Can anyone hear me? So that's how I feel a lot about INFPs, is that they really kind of shut themselves off from the world, and in that sense, they kind of limit themselves to they shut out a lot of possibilities when they do that. And I think it's because they're such sensitive types. They don't want their world to be impinged upon, but at the same time, they have to learn how to coexist between their world and reality. And so I think that's the real struggle that most of them have in this lifetime. And I definitely think that that's the Piscean struggle for sure. They live in this playful universe. Sometimes it can be very, very dark. They don't shy away from that, being the water sign. They kind of like revel in that darkness, and that's kind of what makes them unique. But the further they go in that world, the less grounded they are in this one. And so it really takes some people, again, like the INFJs, they need to surround themselves with people that can see that and identify when it's happening and when they need a little shove in the right direction, because sometimes it's just like they don't even know how to make decisions. And it really, that P really makes an impact here, by just kind of letting them float. It's just they're not driven. They don't really know how to put their abilities into use in this world, and they're just kind of drifting in a sense, is what I find a lot. But they can be really great personalities. They have a heart of gold, and they, very imaginative. So if you love creative types, INFPs, I don't think you can get much more creative than an INFP once you kind of learn how to peel back the layers a little bit and look behind what's presented, because they are definitely puzzles in a sense. Do you ever find the cheese in the middle of the maze? I don't know. Still learning that for myself, but they definitely mean well, and I think that they're always trying to learn how to function, but it's just not their primary goal. So a lot of the times it just takes the back seat to doing what they do best and living inside their own heads. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think. I'm open to opinions. I'm still learning Myers-Briggs, and I think the more I talk about it, the more I learn. I take in examples from my life. I watch a lot of film, so I think I see archetypes in film a lot of times. And but it's interesting because Myers-Briggs really, there's a lot of different schools of thought out there on the same characters, and how people can have such a difference of opinion just on this one character. And so it really takes some looking at, and kind of using your intuition, I guess, in a way, because some things look different on paper than how they actually feel or present themselves. But yeah, so just let me know what you guys think. And then hopefully, with the signs, I always try to stay unbiased, and I haven't offended anybody. I love all the signs. They all exist for a reason, and they all serve a purpose. Yeah.